Picture this, May ke-1618. Prague Castle. Two government ministers are about to have the worst day of their lives. They're dragged into a meeting room, given a mock trial, and then thrown out of a window. 3 stories up. Now, you might think this is just another Tuesday in medieval politics, but here's the thing: that single act of defiance didn't just break a few bones. It shattered an entire continent. What followed was 30 years of absolute carnage. We're talking about a conflict so brutal, so utterly devastating, that it would kill more Germans proportionally than both world wars combined. Ready? Let's dive into the madness. So here we are, ke-1618. Europe's been a powder keg for about a century now, ever since Martin Luther nailed his complaints to the church door and he accidentally invented Protestantism. Now the whole continent's split down religious lines, and everyone's absolutely convinced they've got God on their side. Up north, you've got Protestant rulers who think the Pope's basically running a corrupt racket. Down south, Catholics are loyal to Rome and terrified of these new ideas spreading like wildfire. England's got a Protestant king who's paranoid about Catholic plots. France has got Catholics worried about Protestant rebellion. And then there's the Dutch, who've been fighting Spain for independence for nearly 50 years already. Brutal stuff. But the real mess? That's the Holy Roman Empire. Now, calling it an empire is generous, really. Some French philosopher later joked it was neither Holy Roman nor an empire, and honestly, he wasn't wrong. It's more like a jigsaw puzzle of mini kingdoms, duchies, and the city-states, all sort of loosely connected. Think of it as the bits that would eventually become Germany, but with more complicated. Each little territory runs its own show, but they're all technically under this emperor bloke who gets elected by 7 powerful princes. For generations, the job's gone to the Habsburg family, you know, the folks who basically own half of Europe, including Spain and all its American gold. Here's where it gets tricky. The emperors are hardcore Catholics, but their empire split right down the middle religiously. Since 1555, they've had this agreement: whatever religion your ruler follows, that's your religion too. Simple, right? Except it's not. You can't just force people to believe things, and the missionaries from different sides are constantly trying to win converts. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And it does. Bohemia, that's roughly modern Czech Republic, has always been a bit rebellious. The locals had been questioning Rome's authority for ages, way before Luther even showed up. But their king is Ferdinand, a Habsburg and an absolute fanatic. He starts canceling religious freedoms, tearing down Protestant churches, basically poking the bear repeatedly. The Bohemian nobles have had enough. May 23 RD, ke-1618. This is where our story properly kicks off. The rebels corner 2 of Ferdinand's ministers at Prague Castle, Film Slavata and Jaroslav Borzita, if you're keeping score, plus their secretary. They give them a quick trial, find them guilty of being, well, Ferdinand's ministers basically, and then chuck all 3 of them straight out the window, 70 feet up. Now here's the mad bit: they survive. Catholics immediately claim angels caught them mid-fall. Protestants reckon they just landed in a massive pile of manure. Either way, they walk away, but the damage is done. Bohemia's now in open rebellion against the emperor, and Europe's about to tear itself apart. Ferdinand's not alone in this fight. He's got Duke Maximilian of Bavaria leading the Catholic League. He has secured the loyalty of the Duke of Saxony with promises of territory even though the Duke is Protestant, which tells you everything about how messy this gets. And most importantly, he's got Spain backing him up. Spain's still the superpower of Europe, and they are not about to let chaos in Germany threaten their supply routes to the Netherlands. But Ferdinand's got problems straight away. The Bohemian rebels besiege Vienna. Meanwhile, Transylvanian forces backed by the Ottoman Empire, Ferdinand's worst nightmare, invade Hungary, burning villages and causing havoc. The Ottomans themselves stay out of the actual fighting, but imagine if they'd committed fully. Europe could have looked very different. August 1619 gets even weirder. The Bohemians are doing well enough that they decide to sack Ferdinand and crown their own King Frederick. But that same month, the actual Holy Roman Emperor dies, and guess who gets elected as the new emperor? Ferdinand. Suddenly, this local rebellion becomes full-blown treason against imperial authority. The tide turns fast. Ferdinand gets Polish cavalry to harass the Transylvanians back into Hungary. Dan in November tahun 1620, his elite forces meet the rebel army at White Mountain, just outside Prague. The Bohemians are brave but disorganized. The professionals absolutely slaughter them. Over 1,000 dead in barely an hour. The rebellion looks finished, except it's not. This is just the beginning. Ferdinand's not the forgiving type. He has the rebel leaders executed and their heads stuck on spikes for everyone to see. In 1621, his forces tear through the Palatinate Frederick's homeland with Spanish help. That same year, the truce between Spain and the Netherlands expires, and boom, another war joins the pile. By the end of 1623, most of Western Germany is under Catholic occupation, and the Protestant lords in the north are absolutely terrified. So in 1625, Christian of Denmark, who's also Duke of German-Holstein, decides to strike first. He declares war on Ferdinand and marches south with his army. Two brilliant commanders lead the Catholic response, Count Tilly in the Spanish Netherlands and the Albrecht von Wallenstein. Wallenstein's interesting, he's actually a Bohemian Protestant, but he's also a mercenary who's incredibly ambitious. Both men were heroes at White Mountain. For 3 years, they systematically pushed the Danes out of Germany. By 1629, Christians beaten and sues for peace. Ferdinand sees this as his moment. He publishes the Edict of Restitution, basically trying to undo every Protestant gain since ke-1555. It's insanely provocative. Even loyal Catholics think he's gone too far. The imperial electors, the princes who choose the emperor, meet in ke-1630. They're worried Ferdinand is losing the plot, so they dismiss Wallenstein and reduce the army size, hoping to calm things down. But they've made a terrible mistake. Northern Germany is now virtually undefended. And that's when the storm arrives. Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden is a militant Protestant who has watched the Habsburg presence creep closer to the Baltic with growing alarm. July 1630, he sails south with his army. This is one of the most dramatic military interventions in European history. He quickly brings several North German states to his side, some willingly, others under threat. His numbers swell to 40,000. One city allies with him enthusiastically, Magdeburg. The Catholic response is horrific. May 1631, Tilly storms Magdeburg. What happens next is almost beyond description. The city's mayor later writes that thousands of innocent people were murdered and slaughtered in merciless ways. By 10 o'clock that night, the entire city town hall, churches, everything is ashes. Over 20,000 dead, nearly everyone. The massacre becomes powerful propaganda. Pamphlets and the illustrated accounts spread everywhere, detailing the horrors. Catholics will soon experience revenge called Magdeburg Mercy. Some face the infamous Swedish drink. Victims have their mouths forced open and their stomachs filled with water, filth, and the excrement until they burst. The wars unleashed kaleidoscopic horrors across Europe. See, 17th century armies are basically locust swarms. Most soldiers are mercenaries paid in plunder. They strip entire regions bare before moving on. These armies use the Spanish system, large square formations called tercios, 25 men deep, mixing pikemen with musketeers, cavalry scouts and the harassers. Artillery pounds away. Muskets are devastating in groups but individually inaccurate and painfully slow to reload. Musketeers are vulnerable to cavalry charges, so they need those pikemen for protection. But things are changing. New Dutch-style battalions are smaller, less deep, with more firearms, less durable but more flexible and immobile, capable of firing denser volleys. Artillery is being integrated into the main army rather than sitting separately. Gustavus Adolphus perfects this new system. His aggressive, innovative tactics, smaller units, more guns, light artillery in every regiment make his army devastatingly quick and lethal. Later military thinkers like Clausewitz and Napoleon will call him one of history's greatest commanders. Summer 1631, he seems unstoppable. September tahun 1631, Breitenfeld, the Swedish army, reinforced by Saxon troops, meets Tilly's force, nearly 40,000 on each side. One of the war's largest battles, a clash of titans. Tilly's cavalry charges the Swedish right. They're met with devastating fire and repulsed at times. On the other flank, Catholic cavalry routs the Saxons. But as the Catholics advance, A gap opens. Gustavus exploits it brilliantly. Till is caught flat-footed. His ranks dissolve. 7,000 dead on the Catholic side, nearly as men captured. Swedish and Saxon losses? Just over 2,000. It's a crushing victory that opens the road south. By spring, the Swedes are pushing into Bavaria. At Rhine, Tilly tries to stop them but fails and gets mortally wounded. Ferdinand desperately recalls Wallenstein. July ke-1632. Gustavus has moved north to Nuremberg. Wallenstein camps nearby. Both sides struggle for food, ravaged by starvation and disease. Wallenstein breaks camp to scavenge Saxony. Gustavus follows and offers battle near Eltzen. He needs a quick win before Wallenstein gets reinforced, but thick fog ruins his plan. In the chaos, Gustavus leads a cavalry charge, loses his way in the fog, and he gets killed. On paper, Eltzen's another Swedish victory. In reality, losing the Lion of the North is devastating. The Protestant cause reels. That winter, Swedish troops are mutinous and desperate, but Wallenstein holds back in the east near his estates. January 1634, Ferdinand learns Wallenstein's been negotiating his own separate peace. He's declared a traitor and killed by imperial officers. 3 giants dead in quick succession: Tilly, Gustavus, Wallenstein. It's the end of an era. The emperor turns his attention back to Sweden. 33,000 imperial troops move into Bavaria. 26,000 Swedes meet the Mar in Redlingen. Without Gustavus, the Swedes stumble to disaster. Half their army gone, potentially fatal. But it draws someone new into the fight. France. The war's been raging for 17 years. Hundreds of German villages are ruins. Food's chronically short. Reports of cannibalism spread. Besieged soldiers eating dead comrades. Women devouring their own children. Years of pillaging have driven people to desperation beyond imagining. Ferdinand offers a way out. He swears to halt his assault on Protestantism. General amnesty declared. Alliances with foreign powers forbidden. Protestant princes flock to accept. Former allies denounce Sweden as a scourge. But the war doesn't end. France makes sure of that. Though Catholic, France is surrounded by Habsburg territory, a strategic nightmare. Cardinal Richelieu, France's ruthlessly pragmatic chief minister, has been bankrolling anti-Habsburg forces for years. Now he commits the open war and declares on Spain. Immediately, crisis. Spanish forces push into France from north and the east, getting within 70 miles of Paris before they're repelled. The Swedish army's in dismal shape, unpaid, badly supplied, mutinous. But French money and the reinforcements keep them fighting. February ke-1637. Ferdinand II, the man whose stubbornness threw Europe into war dies aged 58. His son Ferdinand III is capable and level-headed but lacks his father's ruthlessness. Swedish commander Johan van Eyck conducts audacious campaigns, winning upsets at Wittstock and Chemnitz. But his supply lines can't support sustained advance, and he is forced to withdraw repeatedly. May 1641, he dies of illness. The following year, his successors meet the Imperials again at Breitenfeld and win another crushing victory. The Swedes entrench in Saxony near the Habsburg heartlands. 1643 proves pivotal. May, 21-year-old Louis de Bourbon smashes a Spanish army at Rocroi, one of France's greatest victories, securing the northern border. The French then move into southern Germany, but their advance stalls at Tuttlingen thanks to Bavarian commander Franz von Mercy. That autumn, the Franco-Swedish alliance faces crisis as Sweden marches north to invade Denmark. An opportunistic land grab, but there's a reason for optimism. Peace talks have begun in Westphalia. Everyone wants peace, but everyone wants a strong bargaining position first. The war will drag on 5 more years. Southwestern Germany gets ripped apart by clashing armies until Mercy is killed at Ellerheim along with 9,000 others. The road to Bavaria is open, but victories crippled the French army. The Swedes have returned to Saxony, pushing south, almost reaching Vienna but lacking men to take it. By 1646, French forces regroup and march against Bavaria. A Swedish force joins them, maneuvering past Ferdinand's main army, leaving Bavaria virtually undefended. Bavaria's Duke Maximilian offers peace, only to rejoin the war months later. The French and the Swedes have had enough. Time for a decisive blow. May ke-1648. The last imperial field army shattered at Zusmarshausen. The remnants fall back south, leaving Bavaria exposed to plunder and the violence. A separate Swedish force marches from Saxony and reaches Prague, capturing Jaroslav Borzita, one of the men thrown from the window 30 years before. Poetic, really, but they can't take the city. Both sides are exhausted, down to their last reserves of everything. Then, early November, momentous news arrives. Peace. After 5 years of discussion in Westphalia, conditions are finally set. Dutch independence from Spain, Swiss independence confirmed, greater religious tolerance in Germany, no more forced conversion except in direct Habsburg lands, territorial concessions, France gets Alsace, Sweden gains Western Pomerania and these 3 important ports. After 30 years of war, it's a peace everyone can live with. The 30 Years' War was an unprecedented disaster. A local revolt over religious rights that reignited ancient rivalries, fed on personal ambitions, until nearly all Europe found itself at war. An estimated 5 to 8 million died, most from famine and the disease. The hardest hit areas lost nearly 2/3 of their people. 1/5 of all Germans perished, proportionally more than either world war. Even after Westphalia, Spain and France fought on for 11 more years. The Holy Roman Empire survived another 150 years before finally dissolving in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars. The Treaty of Westphalia is often viewed as a turning point, the first modern secular international peace conference, a major step toward Europe's nation-states. Historians debate its importance, but one thing's certain: the 30 Years' War cast a long, terrible shadow. For 300 years, it remained a terrifying cautionary tale of how one small act of violent resistance might spiral into senseless total war, a warning that was, ultimately, completely ignored. So there you have it. 2 ministers, 1 window, 30 years of absolute carnage. Makes you think, doesn't it? How fragile peace really is. How quickly things can spiral. How personal ambitions and the religious certainty can combine to create hell on earth. If you found this story as fascinating and horrifying as did, smash that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest moments. And drop a comment what historical conflict do you want covered next? Because trust me, humanity's got plenty more disasters where this came from. Cheers!